Yao.
Hey, hello everyone. Can you hear me all right? Excellent. Oh, it's showing. Great. I'm aware that I'm standing between you and your decent break, so hopefully I'll manage to keep you focused. Just a short while ago, I realized that this is kind of a clumsy title, right? It has the word with twice in a very short phrase, but then I'm not a native English speaker, so I hope you will excuse me. The first part of this title is kind of like the theme of this conference, right? So like this picture shows, software engineering is kind of our craft. And like pottery, our craft is also handmade, right? With care, with ingenuity, with a kind of thoughtfulness. And it requires training, professional skills, and it becomes better with practice, right? Okay, sound adjustment. And then the last part of this talk, I just want to do a little check-in. By a show of hands, who here have heard of the term sociotechnical? Well, maybe 20%, less than 20. And who here, again, when you see this word sociotechnical, have this internal commentary like, well, this sounds like another buzzword? More than 20%. Okay, that's disconcerting. Hopefully at the end of the talk, I would sort of manage to give you a more nuanced and maybe also more actionable perception of what socio-technical design is for me. So at any rate, we all want to make sort of an impact with our craft, right? Making meaningful contributions to something that we want to be proud of as professionals. But then on the path from craft to impact, it's not always as easy as like crossing this romantic bridge you see here. I, for one, have tried to make this crossing several times now. So in this talk, I would just, I tried to share some of my personal developmental journey and sort of how each crossing has shaped me and brought me where I am today. So where am I today? I am an independent consultant based in Copenhagen, Denmark. And the most visible part of my work is kind of captured by this feedback loop on the left-hand side. And that one says that the main thing in my work is domain-driven design and architecture. So the more I do that, the more I'll be able to produce outputs like workshops, domain models, architecture, documentations, and so forth. So that's a pretty neat feedback loop. But personally, what I derive most of my energy from is actually from the loop on the right-hand side. And that one says the more work I do, the more I will be contributing to, now this buzzword again, socio-technical design, and organizational learning and change capacity. And so you can say most people see my public interface on the left-hand side as a consultant, as a public speaker, and so forth. But what people don't often see is my ninja outfit and my invisibility cloak as an undercover change agent. Occasionally, my cover would be broken, and then I would find myself in the center of change, and maybe for instance, in the aftermath of a messy and chaotic event storming workshop. And most clients, they really don't buy in for these things you want on the right-hand side. They come with a delay, right? And so they would say, what do you mean delay? You are a consultant. We hired you to fix this with this magical bullet called DDD, right? And sometimes I myself get into this anxiety, like, I need to fix this. Where's the fix? So we're all human. I think we just have to be compassionate with ourselves. And yeah, so it's, I haven't always been in this big mess like this. When I started my software career, like when I graduated as a computer science major 15 years ago, I imagined a really neat and tidy software career for myself. I was fresh out of school and I was dreaming about tapping into the computing power and the precision of software. to solve complex problems in the world. So every problem back then was, for me, a optimization problem. Like the traveling salesman, it should be solvable using a scientific method, using variables and algorithms. So I was really deeply fascinated by the software compiles, it's logical. And these problems, if not a right or wrong answer, at least they have a sort of a mathematically provable range of optimal solutions, right? So in a way, you can say back then I really subscribed to this really Newtonian and idealistic worldview, saying that the universe is a giant clock, and the laws of nature are like gears and springs, causing everything to move in a predictable and orderly way. So this was back then was the ultimate answer to the ultimate question of life, universe, and everything. But then I became a software developer in a consulting company and got assigned to my first real-life project. So that was a standalone software delivery project in the insurance workflow domain. And in the beginning of this project, we received a big requirement specification documentation, and then another SAD document, software architecture documents as a blueprint. And then our project lead had frequent check-ins with the client. And then we were a great team of 4 developers, and we had a lot of fun. And not only did we deliver this project on time, but also, we also applied a lot of these design patterns from the Gandalf 4 book we learned from school. And we had a rock-solid implementation of the solid principles. But our software never made it to the users. And this was pretty much the reaction we had when our project lead sort of sent us the email message. Our software was unfortunately not going into production anyway. So what was the rub? So first off, the client's business analysts who made this big requirement documents, they misinterpreted or misunderstood some user needs, and in turn that got transferred to us in these email explanations. And also, the determining factor is that the business sponsor of this project, he didn't really align with the parent company, that is his boss, about starting this project. And so because of all that secrecy, no one told us that a mandatory front-end framework needed to be used. And so when these architects from the parent company reviewed our code, they basically decided it would be too expensive to rewrite the whole thing. So our project was dropped, shelved, and forgotten. But then, we got paid well, we got a lot of technical learning and experiences, but obviously we were not happy. If you look at this list, none of these things were technical, right? This was kind of my first existential conundrum. Suddenly, it occurred to me that, the world of software was not this giant clock after all, because design cannot happen in a closed system, and there's a long way from being neat and tidy to being useful. So you can say this is kind of my first cross over this bridge from craft to impact. I applied scientific modeling and my SDLC, software development lifecycle related skills to tackle the technical complexity. But then the result, together with my team, obviously, but obviously the result wasn't very impactful. But, hey, we all learn best from our mistakes, right? That was also a turning point in my career. It gave me the initial awareness that there's this bigger system that our software is swimming in that I just need to pay attention to. So that's systems awareness. And then I decided to become a software architect, if not for anything else, but just to, improve. Is that rain? To increase the odds that I myself would be able to understand and impact the larger decisions around the software. So at that time, I really didn't have a language for this big thing around software, but now I do. This is my current mental model of a sociotechnical system. So I see it as a way to see our whole work as a system of systems. It then has these two types of subsystems, technical subsystems, with the physical software systems, but also our tasks and sub-processes, right? What characterizes a technical subsystem is that it lends itself to divide and conquer. So technical decoupling, a desirable trait. And then the technical complexity is what exists inside these discrete parts in a system. So in a way, you can say that oversimplifying a technical subsystem is the sum of its parts, because if you solve the complexity within each of these parts by recursion, it will just sum up to solving the whole problem. But then we also have this social subsystem on the left, right? And this is our social relations, teams, reward systems, authority systems, our culture, our behavior, right, in this organizational thing. And what characterizes the social subsystem is that it doesn't lend itself so well to divide and conquer. And in my view, a big challenge in a lot of these, scaled agile transformation initiatives is that sort of social systems are treated as if they were this technical system. And when the agile teams, each and every one of them has done what they should, and we try to aggregate the result back together, we suddenly find out that we can't put Dumpty back together again, because the social complexity is a relational complexity. It's in the relationship between parts. It's in our meetings, our decisions, our interfaces, our practices, right? So we say that a complex social system is more than the sum of its parts. It should be, what we should optimize is the product of the relationships between parts. So then there's also this complex relationship between these two types of systems that requires joint optimization. So then also our work as a whole system interacts with this external subsystem, which involves these users we need to create these great experiences for, not only product, right? We heard from Jürgen's talk. So as software engineers, we also need to be aware to be really on top of this value exchange in order to create software that directly or indirectly make a difference in the user's world, in the jobs to be done, right? So anyway, so as I became a software architect, I totally realized that software craft is not a technical activity, it's a relational activity. Like Vladiknonov said, that the biggest challenge in software development is the communication issues between the IT people and the business people, and between the IT people and their managers. This sounds very straightforward, but then that also breaks down this pottery analogy, because pottery is essentially an individual craft, right? But software craft is a collective craft. So who of you kind of have an idea of what this picture is all about? No? Oh, some Star Trek fans. So this is the Borg Collective. So this is a half-organic organization in the Star Trek series. And the Borg drones, which are regenerating here, they share this, they are able to share thoughts through this subspace network. And not only can they do that, they are also able to arrive at exactly the same decisions, right? Without arguing, without negotiation. And that is fascinating, right? We human beings, we can't do that. Most of our communication needs to be facilitated by this thing called language, but it's also constrained by language. What makes things worse is that language can have this long itinerary of traveling. So many hops before the knowledge or decision reaches its final destination, which is often the case in software development. We have all these intermediaries, human load balancers, relaying information, relaying decision, and a lot of things can be lost in translation. And if language is confused on that itinerary, it will also enter software as confused language. Confused concepts, confused relations, muddy boundaries, oh my God, sprawling dependencies, which over time hurts the software's maintainability big time, right? And so how many of you have just heard of domain-driven design before here? Oh, that's much better. That's over half. So one essential social-technical design pattern in DDD is this thing called ubiquitous language. And for me, it has two layers of meaning. At the surface level, ubiquitous language asks us, everybody, domain experts, developers, testers, if you have them, analysts, we use the same language, same concepts in all of our communication, verbal, written, code, tests, meetings, workshops, etc., right? And if we do that, we get rid of translations, we get rid of handoffs, we get rid of, wrong assumptions because it's the same thing. Same terms, we use same relations, right? So then, but that's like, we say that the scope of ubiquitous language in DDD is a very small bounded context. It's a single purpose model. But that's the first layer. At the second layer, in a broader sense, also across bounded contexts, in our work with large-scale structures, architecture, all the decisions in software development, there's also this principle which Eric Evans, the inventor of DDD, later called the ubiquitous attention to language, right? So that's what can help us to really to have a deep and shared understanding of the domain. So where does this ubiquitous language come from? How do we find it? Is it, a domain expert who writes a user story and put it in a Jira ticket? Is it, in big companies, is it these scrums of scrums where product owners, align their decisions and then hand it over to us? Is it the decision of an architect? In an architecture decision record made by whatever architect forum? None of those, right? If we apply this other pattern, sociotechnical pattern from DDD, which is visual collaborative modeling, right? What we do is to put everyone in the same room and give them a first-hand experience of the domain language and domain logic. Like in practices like event storming, we see the forest and the trees in a collaborative and engaging way, everybody together. So this is a similar pattern to something from complexity theory called changing the itinerary of knowledge from language to languaging. And that term is coined by the Chilean biologist and philosopher Humberto Maturana, a person I really admire very much. So language is the means of knowledge transfer, whereas languaging is where where knowledge gets actively processed in the recipient's context, contextual processing, right? Contextual understanding. And what Humberto says is that, in human communications, in meetings, workshops, even family communications, we engage language, but many times languaging is not happening. Knowledge is not processed and internalized. It's merely transferred, yeah? So for me, domain-driven design is a socio-technical craft, buzzwords or not, because almost all the strategic design patterns and technical design patterns are anchored, strongly anchored in this core philosophy called the ubiquitous attention to language and practiced through visual collaborative modeling. And in my work, practically, DDD is used as methods, a set of methods, principles, practices, and patterns, but DDD can also be used as a process to facilitate change and communication. So many times domain-driven discovery is employed as a process model to kick off change initiatives and architecture modernization processes. I would really strongly, this is an old slide, it doesn't include Nick Chung's new book, Architecture Modernization. It describes wonderfully how you can apply DDD as a socio-technical process, but then also Ryan Shriver's blog post, which is linked here, and the DDD starter model. A lot of assets already there. So this is one of my own experiences, my own example, a DDD workshop series I facilitated using DDD as methods and process to discover the problem space first and then the solution space. So this is kind of my second cross over the bridge, right? So I sort of crossed this first socio-technical chasm. So becoming more aware of the social complexity, practiced, this context system awareness and collaborative languaging and modeling. So that has turned out to be more catalytic to increasing the impact of the software outcome I was contributing to. So the next part of this conversation is about a different type of complexity, so that's social system, right? Let's do some problem framing. So our software industry has matured a lot. And now, I dare say every business is a software business. So every company will eventually accrue and accumulate legacy. And some of these are really calcified. So we have, on one hand, aging software system needing architecture modernization. But then as we go, as our organization is also getting older, right? We want to age with grace, but the truth is sometimes we have these compounding sociotechnical complexity. So one metaphor, one creative metaphor I have met when reading this new book from Gene Kim and Steve Spear is this moving the couch metaphor. So let's say we have two developers, Gene and Steve, but not even developer, two people, Gene and Steve. They're trying to move a couch. They have this task, user story, to move a couch together. So by itself, it has design elements, right? Because, where's the, this looks like a really heavy couch, so where's the center of gravity? And this is a narrow staircase, and so how do they rotate? On which axis? Who goes first and facing, forward or backward and so forth? So that kind of decisions, right? So Gene and Steve need to work out that. But then a lot of other things can get in their way if they work in a complex organization. So their story can be just one node in this complex dependency graph, right? Like we see here. And then, there can be intermediaries. Somebody is writing instructions on how they should do this move, right? And these intermediaries can cause that Gene and Steve are not talking directly to each other, right? Then we can also have these, some architect could say, yeah, this is a big thing. Let's divide it into parts. Microservices. Let's move one part at a time and then reassemble it. And then there can be also other dependencies like, okay, Gene and Steve, you can't do this yet because the room the couch is going into, it needs to be painted. It needs to be vacated first and painted first. And the vacating team and the painter teams are multitasking on other priority tasks. So you can't really get started. So these are all coupling problems, social coupling problems, right? And which are in their way. So they don't have independent actions. They don't have independence of actions. Another problem is that if we don't even tell Steve and Gene why the heck they are moving this couch, for whose happiness, who's going to use this, who is going to get happy because of this effort, then they also cannot really be actively contributing to the design process, right? So I think this is such an interesting metaphor, and I have a true story, my own true story, from the time when I was the chief architect. In 2022, I was the chief architect of a product initiative in a really big financial organization that involved 26 squads. They use the Spotify model. I'm not kidding. And these 26 squads are distributed in 5 different tribes. Each tribe has this, their own mandate of outcomes, right? And they have this, it's a fantastic product idea, but it would involve deeply nested API call chains and event choreography. So you can imagine, this initiative required superhuman, heroic effort to do all the coordination, prioritization, and negotiation. And my job back then was to, as the chief architect, to ensure outcome coherence and solution coherence. The outcome coherence was an impossible task because we have a shared outcome of this product. But then we just got reorged, right? Each of these tribes had their own ownership of their own outcomes. One of them wanted to modernize infrastructure. Another one wanted to re-engineer their business processes. All these things need to be piggybacked onto this big initiative. And there's so much cajoling, so much negotiation, so much politicking. Like, I don't even know if that's an English word. But anyway, so then the solution coherence was even harder, right? No one wants these deeply nested API calls. So it was apparent to us that we need to get rid of them, rethink some of these coupling, social. But the oh my gosh, you just got reorged and people are overwhelmed by this reorg. Do you really want to pick the fight with the management and saying this is the wrong boundaries? If you change the APIs, that means that the organization also, the ownership needs to change. So don't pick that fight right now. So the social problems sort of overwhelm the technical design intentions. And it was a very stressful period of my life. Okay, so in this new book called Wiring the Winning Organization, Jean and Stephen talked about this leadership framework for wiring the social system circuitry. And they proposed these 3 principles called slowification, simplification, amplification. So slowification, it just means let's slow down and invest the time to have this shared understanding of the big picture, everybody. Event storming, for instance, right? So they don't say event storming. The simplification is basically like saying, let's drop our local agendas, agile or not. Let's simplify our organizational architecture in sync with the software architecture, right? Let's think in systems, not local turfs, right? Amplification is the hardest one in my eyes because that says you need to shine a light on these softer things like social practices, psychological safeties, and so forth. So they are the work that makes the work, to use John Cutler's words, right? So, yeah, but this is a leadership framework, and I see a lot of resisting of this framing among software engineers. You know, software engineers, we're very happy about the technical subsets. That's our area. And we kind of also got curious about the external subsystem, product thinking, experiences, user needs. Yeah? So, but when it comes to the social subsystems crafting that, designing of that, how is that our problem? Right? So we are just these fish swimming in this social water. Somebody else designed this water. It's not our fault. It's the system's fault. So I don't want to be bothered with it. By the way, you know, if you want to chat, you can find me at the water coolers. We can complain about the management. We can complain about these agile coaches, product owners. But beyond that, don't come to me and bother me about the social system design. It's not my problem. But then look at this. This is really, really saddening. Gallup, this analytics company, they make this year after year in the past 20 years, I think. They ask the same 12 questions about employee engagement. They trademark these 12 questions. So employee engagement, how happy we are in our workplaces. Are we, actually feel we're actually contributing? That employee engagement on a worldwide level stayed as low as 20 to 30% for the past decades. And there's such a big gap between the average companies and those companies what Gallup calls the exceptional workplaces, right? So that reminded me what Deming said 30 years ago. We were all born with this intrinsic motivation to do great things when our life begins. Then through our enculturation, socialization problem from the kindergarten, from school, and from our workplaces, this intrinsic motivation was sort of destroyed. Mid in our lives, we have a hard time distinguishing what is it that I want to create, that I want to make exist, and extrinsic motivation that how I perceive is expected of me. And I have such a visceral feeling of that. Sometimes I don't know. I think the extrinsic motivation has become a mask that I can't get rid of anymore, right? But I also think Dr. Deming is only partially right. I think as human beings, we never really got rid of our deepest aspirations to reach our full potential. It's just because we are surrounded by complexity. We don't have the cognitive capacity. We don't have the model in our heads to really do more, to capture more. So we kind of directed our motivation toward solving problems, like making some small problems go away. I can do that. I can make things less bad. But, creating great things that I really care about. I think we kind of in these organizations, we sort of convinced ourselves, well, we can't really do that because of this complexity, right? So, but anyway, it's such a shame because who are the modelers? We are. We have developed such modeling and design sophistication in crafting software. In our social systems, there are very, very few models that truly describe the runtime intricacies of our components, social components, boundaries, connectors, interactions, but we really can't fix what we can't see. So we really need those expressive and articulative social system models. So you might say, yeah, somebody make those models, right? What about those org charts? We have roadmaps, we have plans, we have backlogs, right? But those are models of good intentions, management intentions. But they don't say anything about the social system's runtime behavior. They certainly don't say anything about the social well-being of that system. So I have this good friend, it's a true person, Jesper. He's a mainframe specialist in a big bank. He tends to say to me, Xin, I've worked here for 45 years, and I've seen reorg after reorg, but it's always the same people. I need to know to pull the knowledge together and help me get stuff done. And that is my knowledge network, and that's what I truly value. As long as that doesn't change, I'm okay with all those reorgs. And I think it's that knowledge network we need to be more aware and put some language on, right? This is one system, social system diagram. This is Jim Benson's 7 elements of visual management. I'm not saying this is the model, but this is one model I found very effective in visualizing some elements, essential elements of a social system as it's sort of in a social architecture kind of way, right? It has it's even a layered architecture diagram. At the top level, it has the tactical information, sort of the UI layer, right? With the state and triggers. So state is the planned work, our tickets, and triggers are the unplanned work. Sometimes these triggers are good. They're the signals that we need to synchronize our big picture understanding. In the middle, we have the strategic information like the business layer. So why are Jean and Steve moving this couch? What's the strategy and what's their place in the story? And then at the bottom, we have this infrastructure layer, which is the cultural information. What makes us a good team and what's meaningful for me as an individual and how are we doing a continuous improvement? How are we being professional together, right? And so not only do we need to see the whole system, but we also need to be intentional about sharing what we see. So this is the team daily stand-up prompts in my systems architect team in my current client called Milestone. And we don't really slavishly go through this list in our 15 minutes, but each architect would then pull one or more prompts from this list to talk about how she or he is doing, being, and feeling on that particular day, right? So this is how we share the whole system on a single day of ours. So the idea is to have these pervasive but non-invasive visual prompts to see and discuss the essential elements of our work so we can have a calm and professional and non-stressful way of working, but also to reveal gaps, right, for improvements, because we can't fix what we can't see. So, a call to action could be, let's consider designing as many of our artifacts, events, and processes as prompts for dialogue, as an invitation for some collaborative communication. Our roadmaps, backlogs, plans, dailies, meetings, and workshops, they can all be opportunities for a collective check-in for, how are we seeing that big picture? Is our understanding disintegrated? But then let's reintegrate and reestablish, right? And so I just want to double-click once more on the joint optimization bit of the technical and the social subsystem. Crafting social systems, in my eyes, is not a means to an end to crafting software, right? It also works the other way around, because software crafting provides such a strong purpose and context for us to find our way back to each other, to have these quality relations that can mobilize our creativity, imagination, perseverance, trust, and true commitment. So it's really, the joint optimization is not to jointly optimize how Steve and Jean are moving the couch, but they are also moving themselves in their change capacity, in their learning capacity, in their capacity to create something they truly care about. I'll skip this work. Then again, I showed you the leadership framework, showed you a lot of things like what I do as an architect. You might still be thinking, yeah, but I'm an individual contributor. But then Peter Block has this message for us. How do you change the world? One room at a time. Which room? The one you're in. So the message here, I think, is that every single one of us has the choice to step forward in the moment as a leader, to ask a thoughtful question about the big picture, to basically grab a pen, go to the whiteboard, and draw, visualize what we're discussing right now. And then perhaps also to bring the group's attention to some conflicting language, then conflicting mental models, or just that big elephant in the room. So I think there are so many things that we can do to initiate this creative and change and learning process with or without formal authority. And so in I think it's 2009, it's like 15 years ago, Daniel Pink proposed this theory of motivation, which a lot of us have bought into, which basically says if you give an individual and a team the autonomy to master some skills they find purpose in, they're going to do great things. It motivates them. And I think with the knowledge and experience we have today, we can upgrade autonomy to agency. So if autonomy is the mandate an agile team or an individual has to take actions in our local agile bubbles, agency is the question, do I feel the freedom and joy to take actions that contribute to the well-being of the whole system? And even when that action means giving up some of my local authority. And that was what was needed in that product initiative with 26 teams. I didn't have the language for that back then, but I think if we worked on the agency bit, we would have some systemic impact with our craft. So Dr. Deming also said, joy in work comes from understanding why our work is important. And with my work with sociotechnical design complexity also shaped how my perception about how my work is important. So the joy in my work has gradually become to architect for value coherence, to lead with the why, not the way, and to enable the teams to think big, to think in systems before they work small, to do the technical decoupling, to divide and conquer, right? And this is the final cross over the bridge I want to share today. This is the second, what I call the second sociotechnical chasm model work. So it helps me focus on the social relational craft to model work as purposeful systems, and also the more subtle skills like listening, having reflective conversations, because that helps us build impactful human systems in conjunction with impactful software systems. That gives us impactful whole work. Obviously, this is just the current phase of my learning process. This is definitely not the final crossing. And I want to end with this quote from Alberto Brandolini that has inspired me, back many years ago, that software development is a learning process and working code is a side effect. And I think what could be beneficial for this fantastic community of software professionals to consider is how we can really bring our already existing technical sophistication and our emerging awareness about human sophistication, bring those two pieces together to help us build better and more healthy software systems and better and more healthy human systems and build ourselves, right, as purposeful systems. I think that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the talk. Are there some questions from the audience? Yes, right away. Now that the ice is broken.
Great, you have to toss it, not me.
So I really like the graph where you showed like the social systems or the subsystem, the technological subsystem, and the external subsystem. But could we not also see like the external subsystem as part of the social subsystem, because we're always part of a bigger organization? Like the first question. And the second question is, where do you start like the socio-economic technical design? Is it like really inside the team, or like the, I know, department, or like the whole organization? Because I think that the example with Jeff, or the mainframe developer, was perfect for like those big organizations. You have like reorgs and reorgs and reorgs, and it's still the same people you're talking to, but they're in a different department.
Okay, there are two questions. The first one is really deep. This is actually about what makes a system a system. Where are the boundaries? The short answer is the boundaries of every system is porous. But at any rate, there is, so Humberto defines a system as these preferential relations that form over time, that makes an organization develop these social contracts and these things that hold them together. And that identity is emerging in a relation to the external system, meaning that the value an organization creates get tested and evaluated in the context. So in that dichotomy, there's an inside, there's an outside. But you're perfectly right. At every point in time, that boundary is porous. And in our design, we pull in the user need, we pull in the user experience to design a more holistic system. Does that make sense? So there are two layers. And then the second part is, how do we start practicing sociotechnical design? And I think if you are a leader, if you are kind of having a formal or informal leadership role here among the audiences, we could consider using some of these tools from domain-driven design and doing some kind of a collaborative, almost like the agile inception phase, to organize some of these things to give everybody that coherence. But also in each of these agile teams, I feel there is also so much we can do as an individual, not just to, I'm called into a meeting, I'm just sitting here, and I'm just like, oh, so frustrated. People are talking south and west and north. Like, why, we can just, any one of us can go to the whiteboard. Do you mean this? And do you mean this? Do you feel that the crux of the thing we're talking about is this? It's as simple, as basic as that. And from the leadership perspective and the joint crossroad, I also feel, how do we start in an organization with so much inertia of doing things the old way? I think my experience is to find the early adopters, and then to build on that and to spread those people like seeds in the other teams, right? So that's one thing, and to have guilds and to have communities like this to talk about it. The more we are aware of it and can put it on the board, the more we can make our managers and our senior executives see that this is what we care, and we create a language and a conversation about. I know this is really fluffy, but Peter Singji, one of the system thinkers I admire a lot, again, says that all systemic changes start with a subtle change of awareness. I think this is probably what I want to say as last.
Thanks. Are we having some more questions? Seems like no. Then thank you very much again.
Thank you.